So in today's video, we're going to talk about box joints or finger joints. So right here we have two different sleds that are made. One for the Dado Stack that can do a 1/2 inch box joints. So that's going to give you a much thicker, like this. You can see the teeth in there. So that is basically a 1/2 inch box joints. Or we have one that's just going to single blade. You can see that's used for these little small ones. Right here. Okay, so when you have the box joints finished and cut, you want them to be where they hold by themselves, but be loose enough that it can kind of move so you can put glue inside of them. So just figuring that out. So there's a lot of different videos and ways you can do it using a miter gauge and a scrap fence, but I just made these sleds that way. It's pretty much always consistent. It's going to be the same whatever you're using. So as you look at our sled, I put a little plexiglass in there just so you can see what you're doing. Make sure your hand doesn't get close to it and touch it. There's a small piece right here, because basically each finger is the size of that gap between that piece of wood and the curve of the saw blade. So you're gonna run it through and then just kind of stack it on top of that to make all of the fingers and go all the way across the piece of wood. Alright, so the first thing you need to do is just the height of the blade. You want the height of the blade to be basically the same thickness or a hair longer than the thickness of the piece of wood. So I'm going to slide it in there and adjust it. So that's pretty much right there where I need it to be. So I'm going to start my piece. Up against that piece of wood in here, just pushed all the way to the side. Again, I know exactly where the blade's going to be, so as long as I keep my hands over here, holding the piece of wood right here, should have anywhere near the blade. Alright, so I have my teeth cut on this one piece. Alright, so now what you want to do to make everything line up exactly where it needs to be is to start the next piece. You don't want to start it up against it. You're going to flip this and put this side on the tooth. And you're going to make your first cut with this just pushed up against the other piece. Once you make that first cut, should have everything line up, and then you just do the rest of the board. This side, and that's where the walnut piece is going to go. So I have it lined up correctly. These ones are a little snug, so I have to adjust it. You can see they're starting to go in. Alright, so the first time I ran through, things were a little bit tight. How I had to put it up against it was a little bit off, so I flipped it around, adjusted it a tiny bit. It's not perfect. You can see now they interlock into each other. One thing I like about box joints is when you use two different species of wood like this. So this is walnut and some alder. It just gives it a cool look because you can see every other color. Alright, so now we're going to do the same exact thing, but we're doing it on the Dado Stack now. So it's going to make a lot bigger of a piece. With the Dado Stack, it does cut a little bit off from being perfectly square. So there is going to be probably a little bit of cleanup if you want to make them perfect, but it'll still do the job. It's a little bit easier to line up when there's less fingers. You can see there's little gaps from the Dado Stack, how the middle blade's a little bit taller. So I can clean that up with a chisel if I want them to be perfectly flush up against each other. And that's just one way to do them. Again, you can do them on the router table. You can do them differently. You can use them just with the miter gauge and kind of make your own jig for it. I prefer the Sled because I know I get a little bit more consistent. It's not going to move on me because it's in both grooves of the table saw. So again, you make your box joints. Now, if I was going to get this to stick together basically forever, what I'm going to do is just going to line up inside the teeth of the fingers with some glue, kind of get it there together, and make sure you sand it smooth. So that's why I usually want these to stick out just a tiny bit, knowing that I'm going to sand it. Because if it's too big, you can always sand it down. If it's too small, you're going to have to recut them.